alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. So, have you ever been cruising on the highway, minding your own business, right? When suddenly, out of nowhere, this car comes flying in from the on-ramp and cuts right across all lanes to get into the left lane? You know what I'm talking about, right? That's what we're diving deep into today. Those drivers that seem to treat the merge lane as a personal fast track to the passing lane, even when they're not even overtaking anyone. And based on the feedback we got from all of you, it seems like this is a bit of a pet peeve for a lot of drivers out there.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, pretty much anyone who's driven on a highway has encountered at some point, right? And it can be pretty infuriating. I mean, you shared some really interesting articles and research with us that dig into like the psychology behind it, the actual impact it has on traffic, and even some like technological solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And in this deep dive, we really want to unpack this whole phenomenon. We want to understand what makes these drivers tick, what the real-world consequences of their actions are, and most importantly, what we can actually do about it. We'll also explore some of the less obvious impacts, like how it affects our mental well-being and even like the environment.
For sure.
Okay, so let's jump right in. The classic scenario is that a driver enters the highway, merges, and immediately darts across multiple lanes to the left lane, often without passing anyone. What's the big deal, right? Why is this more than just a minor annoyance?
Well, one of the biggest issues is safety. I mean, it's not just annoying, it's actually incredibly dangerous. One of the sources you sent mentioned that in the U.S. there are almost 300,000 accidents every year that are related to merging. And it gets even scarier when you consider that about 50,000 of those accidents result in fatalities.
Wow, those are some pretty sobering statistics.
Yeah, and another important factor to consider is the fact that large trucks have a much harder time braking quickly compared to smaller vehicles. So when a driver makes a sudden lane change in front of a truck, it can create a really dangerous situation.
It makes sense. I hadn't really thought about the impact on truck drivers specifically.
Yeah, something a lot of people don't realize.
So besides the safety aspect, what other problems does this kind of merging create?
Well, even if it doesn't lead to an accident, it definitely messes up the flow of traffic, right?
Right.
When someone suddenly cuts across lanes, other drivers have to slam on their brakes, which causes a ripple effect that slows down everyone behind them. It's often the cause of those phantom traffic jams where you're just stuck in a long line of cars and you have no idea why. And then there are the legal and financial consequences. If you cause an accident because you merged improperly, you could be held liable. And that can lead to fines, lawsuits, and even higher insurance premiums.
And I think everyone can relate to that feeling of frustration when you're forced to brake suddenly because someone cut you off, right? It definitely doesn't make for a very pleasant scenario.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's just plain stressful. That sudden jolt when you have to slam on your brakes triggers a stress response in your body. And over time, that can have some pretty serious consequences for your mental health. And, all that stop and go traffic is bad for the environment too, because it leads to increased fuel consumption and emissions.
So it's really a lose-lose situation for everyone involved. But let's shift gears now and talk about some potential solutions. Your source has offered a bunch of different strategies to encourage better merging behavior, starting with good old-fashioned education.
Right, education is always key. We need to make sure that all drivers have a clear understanding of proper merging techniques. That includes things like accelerating to match highway speed before you merging smoothly, instead of abruptly, and most importantly, staying in the right lane unless you're actively passing someone. It's also important to emphasize lane discipline, which means avoiding those rapid multiple lane changes and understanding that different lanes have different purposes.
Yeah, it's almost like we need a driving etiquette refresher course for everyone who hits the road.
Exactly.
What about technology? Are there any tech-based solutions that can help address this problem?
Oh, for sure. One technology that's already widely used is ramp metering systems, those traffic lights at the entrance ramps. They use sensors to measure the speed and volume of traffic on both the ramp and the highway, and then algorithms control the release rate of vehicles onto the highway. This helps prevent large clusters of cars from merging all at once, which would overwhelm the flow of traffic. And then there are ADAS systems, advanced driver assistance systems, which are becoming more and more common in newer cars.
Right.
Features like adaptive cruise control, which automatically adjusts your speed to maintain a safe distance from the car in front of you. And lane keeping assist can also contribute to a smoother and safer merging process.
Those A-Day systems definitely seem like they could be helpful.
Yeah, and adaptive cruise control in particular is a good example because it can help merging drivers smoothly match the speed of the existing traffic flow without having to make those sudden accelerations or braking maneuvers.
That makes sense. So we've talked about education and technology. What about changes to the physical infrastructure itself? Can those make a difference?
Definitely. The way on-ramps are designed can actually influence driver behavior. For example, you can use longer acceleration lanes to give drivers more time to adjust their speed, or use specific pavement markings like broken or dotted lines to visually communicate the need to yield and merge carefully. And then you've got dynamic signage, those electronic signs, that can display messages in real time, like stay right unless overtaking, or merge gradually.
Oh yeah, I've definitely seen those signs. They seem pretty helpful.
Right, they can adapt to changing traffic conditions and provide clear instructions to drivers.
So it's about using those visual cues to guide behavior. What about taking a more direct approach through legal enforcement?
That's another important tool. Stricter enforcement of lane change laws with things like fines and points on your license for improper merging or making multiple lane changes without a clear reason can definitely deter people from doing it. And some places are even starting to use cameras specifically to monitor merging zones and catch drivers who are being reckless or disrupting traffic flow.
So it's a combination of encouragement and discouragement.
Right, exactly.
But then there's also the whole behavioral aspect of it, right? How do we influence how drivers actually think and behave on the road?
Yeah, that's a really important point. One thing we need to do is foster a sense of courtesy among drivers.
Right.
Encourage people to be more mindful of others on the road. Public awareness campaigns that promote things like leaving enough space for merging vehicles and avoiding aggressive lane changes can go a long way in creating a more cooperative driving environment.
Yeah, I think a little bit of empathy goes a long way on the road.
Absolutely, and it's also really important to encourage pre-merge preparations.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it means that drivers need to start paying attention to the traffic flow well before they reach the merge point. They need to adjust their speed on the on-ramp, check their mirror signal early, and then merge smoothly into an open gap without forcing anyone to slam on their brakes.
So being proactive rather than reactive.
Exactly. Now this brings up a key question, which is, why do drivers feel the need to rush to the left lane right after they merge? What's the motivation there?
Yeah, that's always puzzled me. It seems so counterintuitive, especially when they're not even overtaking anyone.
Well, your sources shed some light on this, and it turns out there are actually a bunch of different factors at play. Stress is a big one.
That makes sense.
If you're feeling rushed or under pressure, you're more likely to make impulsive decisions on the road. Another factor is a lack of awareness. Some drivers might just not be aware of the rules regarding merging and lane changes, or they might just be so distracted that they're not paying attention to their surroundings. And then you have good old-fashioned impatience, that desire to get ahead no matter the cost.
Yeah, I can definitely see how impatience would play a role.
There's also some interesting research that suggests that the perceived anonymity of being in a car can actually lead to a decrease in pro-social behavior.
Really? That's fascinating.
So someone who'd never dreamed of cutting in line at the grocery store might feel perfectly fine cutting someone off on the highway because they feel like they can get away with it. It's like the car becomes a shield.
It's almost like road rage is a consequence of that depersonalization.
You're absolutely right. And road rage is a serious issue with potentially long-lasting effects on mental health, both for the aggressor and the victim. For someone who's already prone to anger, the stress of traffic and aggressive driving can really exacerbate those feelings and make it harder for them to control their temper even in other areas of their lives. And in severe cases, road rage incidents, especially those that result in accidents or confrontations, can even lead to PTSD.
Oh, I hadn't considered that.
There's research that shows a significant portion of people who've been in car crashes report experiencing PTSD symptoms afterwards. And it's not just the aggressors who suffer.
Right, being on the receiving end of road rage can be pretty terrifying.
Exactly. It can leave you feeling scared, vulnerable, and anxious, and those feelings can linger long after the incident. It's really important to remember that road rage isn't just a traffic problem, it's a mental health problem.
That's a really important point. So let's move on to some of the more advanced solutions that are being developed to manage traffic more effectively. You mentioned intelligent traffic management systems earlier. What exactly are those?
Yeah, so ITMS basically use real-time data to get a dynamic picture of what's happening on the roads. That data comes from things like sensors, cameras, and even connected vehicles, and it's analyzed to make proactive adjustments to traffic flow.
Interesting. So the system is constantly learning and adapting.
Exactly. For example, it can adjust the timing of traffic signals based on actual congestion levels, or it can quickly identify and respond to accidents or other incidents. And then you have smart infrastructure, which is all about integrating IoT-enabled devices into our roads and intersections. These devices can constantly monitor things like traffic volume and speed, which provides valuable data for both immediate adjustments and long-term planning.
So it's like the roads themselves are becoming more intelligent.
And data-driven solutions are becoming increasingly important too. Things like advanced traffic forecasting using AI can help predict where congestion is likely to occur, which allows for proactive measures like adjusting signal timers or providing drivers with early warnings.
Wow. So we're talking about a lot of sophisticated technology here.
Yeah, and it's not just about managing cars. There's also a big push for better integration with public transportation.
That's great to hear.
For example, transit priority systems can give buses and trams priority at intersections, which makes them more efficient and encourages people to use public transit. And there's also a lot of work being done on multimodal coordination to make it easier for people to seamlessly switch between different modes of transportation.
That's definitely a move in the right direction. Now, your sources also highlight some solutions that specifically target those bad driving habits we talked about earlier. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure, there's a whole range of approaches being explored. Public education campaigns are still crucial, of course, using catchy slogans and memorable messages to raise awareness about the dangers of distracted driving or speeding. For example, you've got campaigns like Don't Primp and Drive that target people who are putting on makeup or doing their hair while behind the wheel.
Yeah, those campaigns are definitely eye-catching.
And technology is playing a bigger role too. Smartphone features like Do Not Disturb modes that automatically activate while driving are becoming increasingly common. And the use of speed cameras in high-risk areas can also help deter speeding.
Those are definitely good things.
And even something as simple as establishing pre-drive routines like setting up your navigation and adjusting your mirrors before you start driving can go a long way in reducing distractions.
I never really thought about that, but it makes sense.
And then there are design changes to the roads themselves. Things like narrower lanes or raised crosswalks in urban areas can naturally encourage drivers to slow down and be more attentive. And of course, consistent and strict enforcement of traffic laws with meaningful penalties for repeat offenders is absolutely crucial.
So it's really a multi-pronged approach.
Right. And one last thing I want to mention is the power of social influence. When drivers see others driving responsibly, it can have a positive ripple effect and contribute to a culture of safer driving.
It's like setting a good example.
Exactly.
Okay, so now let's focus specifically on the act of merging itself. What are some of the most common mistakes drivers make when trying to get onto the highway?
One of the biggest mistakes is trying to merge too early.
Okay.
Trying to squeeze into the highway lanes right at the beginning of the acceleration lane, or even before that in the gore area.
Right.
That doesn't give you enough space to accelerate to highway speed and properly assess the traffic flow. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have drivers who are going too slow on the on-ramp. It's crucial to accelerate to match the speed of the traffic you're merging into.
So it's about finding that sweet spot.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the classic mistake of not using your turn signals. It seems obvious, but it happens all the time. And it makes it really hard for other drivers to anticipate your moves.
I know, it drives me crazy when people don't use their signals.
Right. And then you have drivers who get aggressive, like speeding up at the last minute to try to force their way into a gap, which is both dangerous and inconsiderate. And not yielding properly to the existing highway traffic is another big problem. A lot of drivers don't understand the difference between merging and changing lanes in terms of right-of-way.
Right.
And sometimes drivers get so fixated on finding a gap that they forget to adjust their speed to match the surrounding traffic, which can create a dangerous speed differential.
That makes sense.
Another common mistake is failing to thoroughly check blind spots before merging, which is a major cause of accidents. And some drivers try to merge directly from the entrance ramp without using the acceleration lane to build up speed, which can be really dangerous.
Right, they just kind of jump right in.
Exactly. And finally, a lot of drivers just aren't very good at adapting to different traffic conditions. What might be a perfectly acceptable merging maneuver in light traffic can be really dangerous during rush hour.
So it's about being aware and adjusting your behavior accordingly.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about what not to do, but what about things we can do to encourage other drivers to merge better? Obviously, we can't control their actions, but is there anything we can do to influence them?
Well, we can't force people to be good drivers, but we can definitely contribute to a more positive and courteous driving environment. One way is to support and promote driver education and public awareness campaigns that emphasize proper merging techniques and the benefits of smoother traffic flow. For example, spreading the word about the zipper merge can be really helpful.
The zipper merge.
Yeah, it's where cars in both the merging lane and the adjacent highway lane alternate, merging at the merge point, like teeth in a zipper.
Oh, right.
It can actually be a really efficient way to handle merging, especially in high traffic situations.
Yeah.
And on a more individual level, just being a courteous and predictable driver yourself can make a difference.
I like that.
Things like allowing space for emerging vehicles when it's safe to do so, and using your signals consistently can encourage others to do the same. And understanding and supporting infrastructure improvements like ramp metering and dynamic signage can also help create a more organized and efficient traffic flow. And as vehicle technology continues to evolve, it's important to be aware of the potential of ADS features in our own cars and the future possibilities of vehicle-to-vehicle communication for safer merging.
So it's about creating a culture of consideration on the road.
Exactly.
Now, one thing that your sources touched on that I found really interesting was the economic benefits of smoother traffic flow, which is directly tied to safer and more efficient merging. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. The costs of traffic congestion are enormous, both in terms of time and money.
Yeah, I can definitely believe that.
We're talking about billions of dollars lost every year due to wasted fuel, lost productivity, and the costs associated with accidents. Improving traffic flow, even in small ways, can have a real impact on the economy.
So it's not just about saving a few minutes on our commute, it's about the bigger picture.
Right. Smoother traffic means lower fuel consumption, which is good for both our wallets and the environment. It also means less wear and tear on vehicles and fewer accidents, which translates to lower costs for repairs, insurance, and healthcare. And in the long run, effective traffic management can help us get more out of our existing infrastructure, which can potentially delay or even eliminate the need for costly new construction projects.
So the benefits really ripple outwards.
They do.
So to wrap things up for our listeners out there, what are some concrete steps they can take to navigate highway merging more effectively and contribute to better traffic flow overall?
Well, first and foremost, always focus on defensive driving. Maintain a safe following distance, be aware of your surroundings, and try to anticipate what other drivers might do. And most importantly, stay calm and don't let yourself get sucked into aggressive driving behaviors. When you're merging, be sure to practice those proper techniques we talked about.
Right.
Accelerate to match highway speed signal early. Find a safe gap plane. Check your blind spots and yield to existing traffic. Make a conscious effort to be a courteous driver, allow space for others to merge, and avoid making sudden lane changes. And consider supporting those public awareness and education initiatives in your community that are working to promote safer driving practices.
Great advice. So this has been a really eye-opening deep dive into a topic that affects all of us who drive. To recap, improper highway merging is a serious problem with major consequences for safety, traffic flow, our mental well-being, and even the economy. Addressing it requires a multifaceted approach that involves educating drivers, leveraging technology, improving infrastructure, and enforcing traffic laws.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it also comes down to each of us taking responsibility for our own driving behavior and working together to create a more courteous and considerate culture on our roads.
And I think what's really important to remember is that all of these things are interconnected.
Right.
The way our roads are designed, the technology we use, and the rules we have all influence how we behave as drivers, and vice versa.
It's a complex system for sure.
It is.
So as we wrap up, we want to leave you, our listener, with this thought. Next time you're merging onto the highway, take a moment to reflect on your own habits.
Yeah.
Could even small adjustments in your approach make the experience smoother and safer for everyone? And how might a collective shift towards more considerate driving not only improve our commutes, but also reduce stress and protect the environment? We're always curious to hear what aspects of transportation and driving behavior you find interesting, so please let us know if there are any other topics you'd like us to explore in future deep dives. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening.
Why don't traffic jams ever play hide and seek? Because good luck hiding when everyone's stuck in one place. Ha 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 ha. R-O